Have you ever felt truly stuck? I mean, really stuck. And not just, in traffic or maybe in a job that's just draining you. I'm talking about that deep internal feeling, like being trapped in a story about yourself, a narrative that just plays on repeat in your mind, carving this groove so deep you kind of forget you can even step out of it. It's like being in a quiet room, no windows. Same thoughts, same sorrows, same fears, just bouncing off the walls day after day. For so many of us, this is the silent reality of things like depression, anxiety, addiction. It's this profound disconnection, isn't it? From joy, from other people, and ultimately from ourselves. Okay, now just imagine stepping out of that room for a second. Step into an ancient forest, breathe that in. The smell of damp earth, decaying leaves, look up at those huge trees reaching for the sky. Everything here seems to understand something that we've maybe forgotten. Cycles, connection, renewal. But the real secret, the forest's biggest intelligence, it isn't actually in the towering trees you see, it's beneath your feet, under the soil. There's this vast hidden kingdom, a biological network of these impossibly fine threads, a kind of consciousness maybe, weaving itself through the earth for, over 1 billion years. This is the mycelial network of fungi. It's the planet's original internet, a web that connects, communicates, and crucially transforms death back into life. So what if these two worlds, that lonely, disconnected room in our minds and this vast, interconnected network underground, what if they're profoundly related? What if there's a key forged in the deep, silent intelligence of this fungal kingdom that could unlock the door to that windowless room? Now, the story we're about to explore, it isn't about some magic pill. It's much more subtle, more beautiful than that. It's about a catalyst, a key. One that doesn't just numb the pain. Instead, it seems to temporarily quiet those rigid looping stories of the ego. It lets the mind remember its own vastness, its own ability to connect, its innate capacity to heal. So settle in. This is our deep dive into how humble fungi are making us rethink medicine, the mind, and really our place in the whole web of life. It's a journey from the lab bench to the very nature of consciousness, and it's a story of hope. Okay, let's unpack this really captivating connection between fungi and the human mind.
Absolutely. And our mission today is really to explore how this, ancient wisdom is now meeting modern science, to understand its unique contribution to human well-being, and maybe uncover the significant hope it offers for some of the toughest challenges in mental health today.
Right, so to really get the power of psilocybin, we first need to understand the incredible, often invisible world it actually comes from, fungi. They're truly the invisible architects of our world, working on this foundational frontier. We often think of life as just plants and animals, right? But fungi are totally in a league of their own.
Yeah, it's a common misconception. Fungi, fascinatingly, are genetically closer to us, to animals, than they are to plants. It's quite surprising. They're cell walls made of chitin, just like, insect exoskeletons. And their role in ecosystems is just foundational, absolutely critical. They're the planet's main decomposers, the recyclers. They break down incredibly tough stuff like lignin and cellulose, the things that make wood rigid. Without them, honestly, our ecosystems would literally collapse under piles of dead organic matter. They are the planet's original cleanup crew.
Wow. It's hard to even picture that. Without fungi, we'd just be buried in dead trees. And it's not just decomposition, right? They have this incredible symbiotic thing with plants. The wood wide web. Sounds almost like sci-fi.
It's a perfect analogy, actually. These fungal networks, the mycorrhiza, they stretch way further than plant roots can alone. Think of them as this huge underground infrastructure for communication, for sharing resources, linking whole communities of plants. Things like phosphorus and nitrogen, they can be shuttled from bigger mother trees to struggling seedlings nearby, giving them a better shot.
Tune them out?
Exactly. And plants can even send chemical warning signals through this network. It creates a more resilient, more cooperative ecosystem. It really challenges that old idea that nature is just, red in tooth and claw.
And it doesn't stop there either. Their unique biology offers solutions for some really modern problems too. This field of applied mycology, like mycoremediation, using fungi to clean up pollution.
Absolutely. Certain species, like oyster mushrooms, they can actually digest complex hydrocarbons from oil spills. They can break down plastics like polyurethane, even some types of radioactive waste. It's amazing.
Seriously?
Yeah, it's a low-cost, sustainable way to tackle some of our nastiest environmental messes. And then there's mycotechnology. Researchers are literally growing mycelium, that's the root-like structure, into sustainable materials. You can make building insulation, packaging to replace styrofoam, even vegan leather. We're shipping from just extracting stuff to actually growing it.
That's incredible potential.
It is. This quiet foundational intelligence of the fungal kingdom, it underpins so much of life. Planetary scales, geological scales, sustaining forests, cleaning the planet. But for us, today, I think the most compelling story, the most immediate one, lies in its personal impact, its potential for human healing, for mental well-being.
And that brings us right back, doesn't it? Back to that feeling of being stuck in that quiet room. Because for so many people, that's not just a feeling. It's the stark reality of this modern mental health crisis we're facing.
It truly is a crisis. Depression alone affects, an estimated 280 million people worldwide. It's a leading cause of disability. And while conventional antidepressants like SSRIs were a huge step forward, let's be honest, they often fall short. For many, they only give partial relief. For a lot of people, they just don't work at all. Plus, you've got side effects like emotional blunting, and they often take weeks, even months to start working, if they do. This leaves millions suffering from what we call treatment-resistant depression, or TRD. It's a critical, unmet need in healthcare right now.
That really paints a stark picture. But what's truly remarkable, I think, is how the solution, or a potential solution, is this rediscovery, right? Linked back to these fungi. Psilocybin mushrooms, they've been used for centuries in indigenous cultures, often in ceremonies. Then, mid-20th century, this guy, R. Gordon Wasson, he publishes a photo essay in Life magazine back in '57. Suddenly, magic mushrooms are in the public eye in the West. And shortly after that, in 1958, Albert Hofmann, the guy who discovered LSD, he isolates and synthesizes psilocybin.
Right. And that kicked off some really promising early research in the 60s. Places like the Harvard Psilocybin Project were doing work. But as psychedelics got tangled up with the counterculture movement, there was this political backlash, which led to the 1970 Controlled Substances Act in the US, and that just slammed the brakes on legitimate scientific research for over 3 decades. Psilocybin was labeled Schedule I, no currently accepted medical use, high potential for abuse. Research just stopped.
It's really amazing to think about that. Promising research just halted for so long, but then came what people now call the psychedelic renaissance. It started quietly, late 90s, early 2000s, driven by a small group of, determined researchers. And this time, the focus was completely on rigorous scientific methodology. You had pioneering groups at Johns Hopkins, NYU, Imperial College London, all focused on really well-defined clinical populations. Okay, but this is where the story gets really interesting. How this cutting-edge science is now validating what perhaps ancient wisdom knew all along, and opening doors to, unprecedented healing. The clinical evidence suggests psilocybin can literally remodel human consciousness, treat some of the most intractable mental health issues.
The initial results were truly striking. And the research since then has just kept building a really compelling case. Take depression. That 2016 study from Imperial College London, led by Robin Carhart-Harris, only 12 patients, but they all had treatment-resistant depression. The results were, frankly, remarkable. 67% had temporary remission after just 1 week, and those effects held up for 3 months. It was a watershed moment, showed it was possible.
Just 12 people, but it opened the door. And since then, the studies have gotten much bigger, right? More robust, like that big Compass Pathways trial in 2022. 233 participants with TRD. They found that a single 25 milligram dose, just one, led to a statistically significant, clinically meaningful reduction in depression. 29% achieved remission at 3 weeks.
Yeah. Read about that.
One moment potentially undoing years of suffering. That's the staggering thing here. One dose, not daily pills, fundamentally shifting someone's mental health trajectory.
It's less about symptom management, more like a rapid, profound reset. And maybe even more groundbreaking was that 2021 Imperial College study. They directly compared psilocybin to acetalopram. That's a common SSRI antidepressant. Now, both groups showed some effectiveness, sure, but the psilocybin group, much faster onset of effects, like 1 day.
1 day.
Yeah. And crucially, their response and remission rates were twice as high compared to the escitalopram group. Patients also reported qualitatively greater well-being, less emotional blunting, more emotional breakthrough, not suppression. It suggests a different kind of healing, a deeper shift.
And it's not just depression either. Psilocybin seems to have this powerful impact on people facing, the toughest circumstances, confronting mortality.
Absolutely. Back in 2016, there were 2 separate studies, but they came out simultaneously. Johns Hopkins and NYU, they looked at cancer patients dealing with really severe end-of-life distress, anxiety, depression. A single dose of psilocybin led to immediate, substantial, and enduring decreases in depression, anxiety, hopelessness, death anxiety.
Wow.
Many, about 80% in the Hopkins study, reported lasting relief for 6 months or more. And this wasn't just a chemical effect, it was the profound, often mystical experience itself that seemed to be the medicine. The deeper the journey, the more lasting the shift. It suggests that a fundamental change in perspective can literally redefine how we face our deepest fears, even death.
Okay, what about addiction? That's often seen as these really rigid, compulsive loops. How does psilocybin manage to break those chains? Is it insight or something else?
Well, the results there are also incredibly promising. Johns Hopkins research, led by Matthew Johnson, looked at smoking cessation. Small study, 15 heavy smokers. But get this, an astounding 80% were smoke-free at 6 months. 60% were still smoke-free at 30 months.
That's huge compared to normal methods.
Dramatically exceeds conventional methods, yeah.
Yeah.
And more recently, a 2022 NYU study on alcohol use disorder, 93 people. Psilocybin significantly reduced heavy drinking days. These are deeply ingrained behaviors, notoriously hard to treat. It really points to a unique ability to disrupt those patterns.
And the research keeps expanding, doesn't it? There's early work on OCD, anorexia nervosa, even PTSD.
Exactly. When you step back and connect these findings, you see this consistent pattern. Rapid, robust, and sustained therapeutic effects. Across conditions that have been just notoriously difficult to treat with what we've had available, it's a really compelling consistency.
Okay, so if that's what psilocybin does, let's try and simplify the science a bit. How does it do it? It sounds like it's actually remodeling the mind.
Yeah, it really seems to be. It all starts at the molecular level. When you take psilocybin, your body converts it pretty quickly into its active form, which is called psilocin. Now, this is psilocin acts like a key fitting into a lock. It mimics serotonin, a natural brain chemical, and it primarily binds to a specific receptor in your brain, the serotonin 2A receptor, or 5-HT2A.
Okay.
These receptors are found in really key brain areas involved in, like self-thought, perception. And when the psilocin binds there, it essentially desynchronizes the normal, often rigid patterns of brain activity.
Desynchronizes, so it's literally shaking things up in there. And one of the big effects people talk about is how it quiets the ego, specifically this thing called the default mode network, the DMN.
That's a great way to think about it, yeah. The DMN is kind of like your brain's autopilot. It's this network of brain regions that's most active when we're just resting, not focused on the outside world. When we're daydreaming, remembering things, planning, or just, ruminating about ourselves.
That inner monologue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's often called the neural correlate of the self, or ego. Now, in conditions like depression or anxiety, this DMN can become hyperactive and really rigidly stable. It traps people in those repetitive negative thought loops.
Like a stuck record, just playing the same sad song over and over. But is there a risk then? If you disintegrate the ego, do you lose your sense of self? Or is it more about just loosening the grip of those negative stories?
That's a really important distinction. No, it's not about losing yourself. Think about that quiet room again, the echo chamber. Psilocybin seems to offer this brief but really powerful moment of silence in that echo chamber. By decreasing the activity and the connectivity within the DMN, it's like temporarily turning down the volume on that persistent ego voice. This disintegration of the DMN, it's closely linked to what people describe as ego dissolution. That feeling where the boundary between yourself and the world kind of blurs. When the DMN is quieter, it lets people step outside their usual self-narrative. They can view their problems from a more detached, objective place. It opens the door for new insights, but without losing their core identity.
That's fascinating. So the DMN quiets down, but the rest of the brain doesn't just go silent, right?
Quite the opposite, actually. While the DMN gets less rigid, the brain as a whole becomes more fluid, more flexible. Scientists talk about this using the concept of brain entropy. Think of entropy as just a measure of how flexible or unpredictable a system is. Our normal waking brain tends to be pretty predictable, operating in established patterns. But psilocybin seems to drastically increase brain entropy. The brain becomes more, let's say, disordered, fluid, less predictable in its activity.
Okay.
What that means is that parts of the brain that usually don't talk much to each other suddenly start communicating. All this increased crosstalk might explain the vivid, often profound and meaningful experiences people report.
And this leads to something called the REBUS model, is that right?
Yeah, REBUS stands for Relaxed Beliefs Under Psychedelics. It's a helpful model. Basically, our brains work by forming prior beliefs about the world. These act like filters for everything we experience. In depression, these beliefs often become overly precise and negative, like I'm worthless, nothing will ever get better.
Right, those rigid thoughts.
Exactly. Psilocybin seems to relax the precision of these rigid beliefs. It temporarily lessens their grip. It's like the brain shifts from a state of confirmation bias, only seeing evidence that confirms the negative belief, to a state of active learning. It becomes more open to new information, new perspectives. This allows people to actually revise those deeply ingrained negative beliefs.
And that revision isn't just a fleeting thought, is it? Because what you're describing next, this window of plasticity, sounds like it's literally rewiring the brain for lasting change.
That's the crucial piece, I think. While the intense effects of psilocybin are temporary, the brain doesn't just snap back to its old ways. Psilocybin promotes neuroplasticity. That's the brain's ability to change, to grow new connections. Scientists even coined a term for compounds like psilocybin, psychoplastogens, because they promote this plasticity.
Ah, psychoplastogens.
Yeah. Studies have shown rapid growth of new synapses, the connections between brain cells, and also new dendritic spines, which are the little receivers on neurons, especially in brain areas important for emotion and thinking. It's like psilocybin reopens a critical window of brain plasticity, a window that's usually more open when we're very young. This allows the brain to physically remodel itself, creating new hardware, you could say, for healthier ways of thinking. And this window, this increased flexibility, it can last for days, maybe even weeks, after just one session, helping to solidify the insights gained during the experience.
So what does all this mean then for how we think about mental health, about healing? It feels like a complete shift in perspective, moving away from just managing symptoms.
Precisely. It's way more than just symptom suppression. It really points towards a fundamental reset being possible.
And this brings us to a really crucial point. Psilocybin isn't some magic pill you just take on your own. It works, as the research shows, only within a very specific structured context. It needs this careful therapeutic framework.
Absolutely vital. Can't stress that enough. The profound results we've been talking about, they don't happen in a vacuum. The model that produces these outcomes is built on three essential pillars: preparation, the dosing session itself, and then integration.
Okay, let's break those down. First, preparation. That seems key, setting the stage.
It truly is. The whole journey starts weeks before any psilocybin is actually administered. It involves multiple sessions with two therapists, the same therapist who will be there during the dosing day. The main goal is building trust, educating the patient about what the experience might be like, including the fact that it can be challenging, but that those challenges are often where the value lies.
Setting expectation.
Exactly. And helping them set intentions for their journey. They're taught this simple but really powerful mantra: trust, let go, be open. This helps them surrender to the experience rather than fighting it, especially if difficult stuff comes up. It's about empowerment, giving them tools to navigate.
Then comes the dosing session itself, and it sounds very different from, say, a typical doctor's visit.
Oh, completely. It's specifically designed to be non-clinical. Imagine a space that feels more like a comfortable, cozy living room, not a sterile hospital room. The patient lies down, usually wears an eye mask to help focus inward, listens to a carefully curated music playlist through headphones. The music is almost like a co-therapist, guiding the emotional flow of the experience.
Interesting.
For the 6 to 8 hours of the drug's main effects, those two therapists are right there. But they're non-directive. They hold space, offer reassurance if needed, ensure safety. Their main job is to let the patient fully surrender to their own internal journey. We've even had patients say it felt like a grown-up sleepover, but obviously with a much deeper purpose.
And that journey doesn't end when the music stops. There's the third pillar, integration. This sounds like where the lasting change really gets cemented.
Exactly right. Starting the very next day and continuing for several sessions afterwards, integration is all about making sense of it all. Making sense of the often profound, complex, sometimes just indescribable material that came up during the session. The therapists help the patient explore insights, connect them back to their actual life, and translate them into concrete changes in behavior or thinking. This phase is absolutely crucial because it takes full advantage of that window of neuroplasticity we talked about.
Right, when the brain is more flexible.
Yeah. With the brain more open to change, the patient can more effectively establish new, healthier perspectives and patterns. It solidifies the gains.
Now, when we talk about something this powerful, safety is obviously a huge question. How is safety defined? How is it ensured in this model?
Okay, two aspects here. Physiologically, Psilocybin is remarkably safe, extremely low toxicity. A fatal overdose from the mushrooms themselves is basically impossible. And it's not physiologically addictive. Physical side effects, like maybe a temporary rise in blood pressure or some nausea, they're usually mild, transient, and they're closely monitored by the therapist during the session. The more significant considerations are psychological. The experience can be intensely challenging. It can bring up fear, anxiety, grief, deep stuff. But the therapeutic model is specifically designed to navigate these moments. In fact, challenging experiences are often reported afterwards as being the most therapeutically valuable parts. And crucially, there's rigorous screening beforehand. People with a personal or immediate family history of psychotic disorders like schizophrenia or bipolar I are typically excluded because they might be at higher risk. For everyone else who's screened in, the framework itself, the preparation, the trust, the constant presence of trained therapists, that ensures that even difficult journeys remain psychologically contained and safe.
So, unlike traditional meds where the subjective experience might be seen as just a side effect, here, the experience itself seems to be the core mechanism of healing. That's a fundamental shift.
It absolutely is. Research consistently shows that the quality, the nature, the intensity of the subjective experience, especially things like mystical type experiences or deep emotional breakthroughs, that's a strong predictor of how good the long-term therapeutic outcomes will be. It's not just the drug hitting receptors. It's the drug facilitating a profound, meaningful psychological experience within a safe and supportive container. That's what seems to drive the healing.
This all sounds incredibly promising, but what are the hurdles? What are the challenges to making this widely available in mainstream medicine? It feels like a pretty big leap for our current healthcare systems.
Oh, there are significant hurdles,
Yeah.
no question. First, scalability and training. This model is really resource intensive. You need 2 highly trained therapists for maybe 8 hours straight on dosing day, plus all the prep and integration sessions.
That's a lot of time.
It is. Meeting the potential demand would require a massive effort to train and certify enough qualified therapists. That's a huge undertaking. Second, you've got regulatory and economic challenges. Psilocybin is still Schedule I federally in the U.S. and restricted in most places. That complicates research, clinical practice, everything.
Yeah.
And our healthcare systems, they're just not set up to reimburse for this kind of novel, complex, time-intensive procedure. It's totally different from a 15-minute doctor's visit and a prescription for daily pills.
Right, it's a whole different paradigm.
Which really raises that big question. How do we balance this profound therapeutic potential with the practical realities? How do we make it accessible? So yeah, to kind of bring it all back together, we started looking at that ecological wood wide web, right? The network that sustains the forest. And we end up understanding how psilocybin, a compound from that same fungal kingdom, might help sustain the mind that feels lost within itself. While fungi's ecological role is absolutely foundational to the planet, operating on these huge, slow geological scales, psilocybin's impact feels immediate, personal, profoundly transformative for human suffering. It's a different scale, a different kind of urgency, perhaps. You know, for a species like ours, increasingly grappling with this crisis of mental illness, depression alone affecting hundreds of millions, an intervention that offers direct, rapid, and profound relief. Relief measured in, a life reclaimed, a family restored, maybe a soul finding some peace. That feels like, for our time right now, the most impactful frontier of mycology. It doesn't just help us understand the world. It offers a tool to help heal the minds perceiving that world.
And the future possibilities seem immense. Research is already expanding, isn't it? Looking into PTSD, eating disorders, maybe even chronic pain. There are innovations trying to address scalability, like exploring group therapy models. And the really fascinating development of non-hallucinogenic analogs, compounds that might give you the brain plasticity effects without the intense psychedelic trip. That could be a whole different kind of tool for different people. Ultimately, this whole reemergence of psychedelic medicine, it really challenges our traditional biomedical view of psychiatry, doesn't it? It pushes us to think about consciousness, about healing, about the future of mental health care in a new way. It points towards a paradigm that maybe values meaning, spirituality, connection as central to well-being, not just brain chemistry. The story of fungi just keeps unfolding, showing us how their wisdom from the soil right up to the soul might offer tools for resilience, for renewal. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What else is down there waiting to be understood?